So this is an example of how we work with argument or persuasiveness without doing a regular EOC prompt, 26 lines. We disguise it. We give them a quote. It can have something to do with whatever subject. For instance, my juniors were going over Native American myths, and so we took a quote from Steve Seattle, and we go through it together. And so here we were looking at vocabulary that we might need to know. And then once we've kind of discussed the quote, they go into 3 steps. And the first is to paraphrase in their own words what the speaker is saying. Then do they agree or disagree? We try not to give them any in-betweens. It's either yes or no. And they can't just say, yes, he's right, no, he's wrong. They have to explain why. And then we go into the third part, which is the meat of the assignment. We tell them, if you don't have number 3, then you really didn't tell me anything. And they have to use, we tell them at least 1 to 2, or they can use 1 if it's a really good example. So we try to steer them away from listing 5 different examples and just it being a list. So that an example from literature, pop culture, they're personal, but we start with these first because we don't want them to talk about personal if they can avoid it. And then they have to explain how they prove what they said. And the other thing we try and tell them is not to write it in chunks like number 1, number 2, number 3. We try to get it to look like their essay. So if it is in chunks, it should have indentions to show their paragraphs. And then their grade is based on how well their argument is made and whether or not they provided examples. So it's basically the same rubric you would use for your EOC2